Hello, everyone, and welcome to Creators in the Cosmos. It's me, Jennifer,
And Vi.
and today we are going to break down for you one of my favorite subcategories of astrology, Chiron.
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 How did we stumble upon this?
Yeah, so I feel like Chiron's one of the things in astrology not really talked about, and it's probably been V and I's biggest deep dive of them all. It's very intertwined in V and I's chart, so I think for us, knowing this energy and figuring out how to work with it has been pretty essential. So we wanted to share with you how you can unlock Chiron for yourself, how to work with Chiron, and I think this is one of the shadow work elements of astrology, but I think there's so much freedom in knowing Chiron because Chiron is a wound in your chart that's never going to go away. It's just something you kind of learn to integrate and work with and trust that even though it's kind of a tougher sensation, it's one that you're meant to co-create with. And yeah, that can give yourself a lot of forgiveness because I think for a lot of us, we think we need to heal the uncomfortable away when astrology also shows us that some things are meant to stay uncomfortable.
Yeah, so I want to talk about the Greek mythology real quick to carry on to what you were saying. It was Chiron's connection to wounding in astrology that comes from the story of his death. During a battle between centaurs, Chiron was accidentally struck by a poisoned arrow. Although he was a skilled healer, he couldn't heal himself and suffered an intense pain. As the son of Kronos, or Saturn, Chiron was immortal, meaning that he couldn't die. So to end his suffering, Chiron chose to give up his immortality. In gratitude, his half-brother Zeus, or Jupiter, placed him in the sky as a constellation. Chiron's wound wasn't self-inflicted, it was caused by fate, which is why he's often associated with deep accidental wounds in astrology. So with that deep wounding, like Jen said, it's not necessarily knowing your Chiron and overcoming it in the sense of I fixed it, it's never going to come up again. It is something that is going to constantly walk through life with you. It's just knowing when it's going to be triggered and how to integrate that into your day-to-day and how to give yourself grace, because I feel like when it comes to deeper wounds, a lot of us do immediate guilt and shame tactics. Mm-hmm. So finding a nice middle ground on the in between there.
Yeah, so if you want to pull up your birth chart, we love the app The Pattern. And on The Pattern, it's seen in the little circle birth chart as a K. It sometimes also looks like a little key. Some websites, when you pull up birth charts, will have Chiron and others will not. So you definitely want to find one and figure out what sign your Chiron is in and what house it is in, because we're going to go through the presentation for all of it. But first, I thought we could personally kind of talk about how Chiron has impacted V and I. So I can start us off. So for me, Chiron is in Leo, and that falls into my 12th house. And the wound of Leo is really tied in with my self-expression, my creativity, my ability to shine. And I honestly think for me, with it being in the 12th house, people can very easily see my Leo, but it's really hard for me to trust and lean into that energy. And for V and I, Chiron is directly on top of our moons. So every time we have to lean into emotions, we have to feel the intensity of Chiron. So not only have I had to dig into Chiron with it being in my 12th house, which is just not an easy house to access. We'll talk about that in general with all the other houses. But I also have had to look at the relationship to both the moon and Chiron in my chart. So when you pull up your own chart, you want to see if there's any aspects to Chiron. So you can see if you have anything connected to it. So either another planet is in the same house as Chiron, or if you have just any different aspects to it. So maybe it's tied in with another planet. So there's definitely a lot of aspects to look at, as well as the sign it's in and the house. So yeah, that's just kind of my deep dive. I've had to learn that no matter how often I show up, how much validation I get on what I'm doing, it's very hard to feel like it actually was received and landed. And so I have to kind of do things extra brave and just trust that, it's going to find the people it's meant to find. But like, it's always very exposing and very vulnerable, no matter what, when I'm expressing pretty much anything through like a creative lens. And I've shared before, like teaching yoga and building up my TikTok following, like the nerves of building everything up, like I had to do it terrified. I threw up the first year and a half I taught yoga before every single class. That's a long time to expose yourself and still have that visceral of a response. But that's just an example of my Chiron moon.
Absolutely. Yeah. So before I explain my Chiron, I just want to say for people who are listening who are probably newer to astrology, Jen's so right. Like the aspects is just like a deeper, more personal dive into how it could affect your chart. If you need to just take bite-sized pieces and learn what house it's in and what zodiac sign it's under today, that's totally fine. When you're ready for a deeper dive, I do highly, highly recommend looking at the aspects, because for me, Chiron is in my 10th house in Virgo. As Jen mentioned, it is directly on top of my moon, but it is also directly on top of my midheaven, which is like how it's like your most seen part of yourself. And mine is wounded with perfectionism and like constant need for self-improvement. I call it Churgo, and we usually call Jen's Cleo.
Cleo and Churgo.
So if you hear those two terms, that's what we're referring to. But on top of the Virgo stellium conjunction in my chart, everything is also directly opposing my Pisces Saturn, which, if you remember from the Greek portion a few minutes ago, is Chiron's dad. It's okay. Saturn and I are at a point of peace. I'm also directly in my Saturn return, and knowing all of these aspects and that they're all touching my deepest wound has been like a really humbling experience. I wouldn't say that I've overcome the perfectionism. I just helped Jen with one of her witch retreats in Salem, and it was such a beautiful experience. But even in this more healed, much more aware form, like there was still a moment where I realized for the first like 48 hours of said retreat, like I went into perfectionism, making sure everyone else was taken care of, and I kind of maybe neglected myself a little bit. And when even Jen was trying to help me not neglect myself, my brain was like, no, like I just need to keep doing the things for the people. And that's even being so heavily aware of my own chironic wounding.
Yeah. It continuously shows up, but it's the moments. Like I got a tattoo for my Cleo actually, and it's right at my solar plexus. So I just hold that space because that sensation is always there. You just have to learn to not really like spiral and overly like deflect and protect that part, because it's meant to be exposed and vulnerable, and you just have to kind of keep going through the motions of what you love and what you want with that sensation of maybe a little bit more fear or a little bit more vulnerability. But uncomfortable feelings we tend to like hide or deflect, or like, we want to hurt other people because it feels uncomfortable to us. Like these are all the shadows that working through Chiron will help you with. We just read a really, really good reference Chiron book. So the book was called Chiron, and it was by Barbara Hand Clow. And what was so cool about the book, it's pretty high level astrology breakdown, but I loved that for her, she was theorizing that Chiron is actually, it orbits so close with all the other planets, it's just as big as a planet. And she really believes that Chiron is ruled by Virgo, and that Mercury is actually not the ruler of Virgo and Gemini. She believes that Virgo is connected to Chiron. And if you learn the shadows of Virgo, Virgo wants to improve, and it really feels and is very sensitive to pain and the undercurrents and is associated with a lot of healing. But Virgo has to do it from a very like stressed out point and has to really learn by like refining and learning to deal with that nervous energy but channel it into something. And so I really liked that take in that theory.
Now, for people who are just learning about Chiron for the first time, I do also really like that theory, especially when you consider that Chiron in Greek mythology is Saturn's son and not Saturn itself, but typically astrologers actually associate Chiron with Saturn. I think Chiron is a Virgo wounding because my Chiron is obviously a little exalted in my chart anyway. Like, it's just very, very highlighted. I've been deep diving Chiron basically since Jen pointed out a year ago that it's literally on top of my emotions, and then on top of that, it's my wounding in a very like public way, and something I've been working on for almost a whole year. So as I've done my own reading, and I'll link any books down below if you're interested. I'll make sure the one that Jen referenced is the very first one. It's probably been my favorite book to read to date. Traditionally, people are going to associate Chiron and Saturn together is really what I wanted to like highlight, because yeah, most people don't really talk about Chiron. It's not something I hear a whole lot, which is part of the reason I've fallen down the rabbit hole, because I just wanted a little bit nicher understanding of something that's a lot harder in the chart.
Yeah. So let's go over, V, I'll have you read Chiron and all the signs first, and then I will read out just a little blurb of how Chiron kind of presents in each of the houses. So if you haven't already pulled up where your Chiron is, go ahead and do that, and we will give you just a list of just a general presentation for each.
Absolutely. So starting at the top, Chiron in Aries. So Chiron in Aries, you're going to present wounds related to self-assertion and identity. These individuals may struggle with feeling confident or taking the lead, but they can become great members for others in finding their own strength and courage. For Chiron in Taurus, your wounds will be related to your self-worth and security. You may struggle with material comforts or feeling valuable. These individuals can help other people find stability and inner peace. So there is like an ironic shift as we go down this line that you'll realize, like, your biggest wound is this, but ironically, as much as it's your biggest wound, you actually help others with that exact issue. So Chiron and Gemini, wounds are going to be related to communication and self-expression. You might feel like you have a really hard time feeling understood or expressing thoughts, but then again, you help others find their voice and share their ideas. For Chiron and Cancer, your wounds are going to be related to home and family, also emotional security. You might feel emotionally vulnerable and disconnected from your roots, but you help others nurture their own emotional well-being. Chiron and Leo, wounds related to creativity and recognition. These individuals struggle with feeling special and often are seeking validation, but they have the ability to inspire others to embrace their own creativity and self-expression.
Heard.
Chiron in Virgo, these wounds are perfectionism and self-improvement related. They have a tendency to feel not good enough, but these individuals can guide others into accepting their imperfections and improving their lives without harsh self-criticism. Chiron in Libras, your wounds are going to be related to relationships and balance. You might struggle with fairness and feeling valued in relationships, but you're teaching others how to create harmony and mutual respect in partnerships. For our Chiron in Scorpio, your wounds are related to power and control and transformation. These might have deep emotional pains tied to fear of vulnerability or fear of loss. And you can help others face their fears and undergo a personal transformation. For Chiron and Sagittarius, your wounds are related to belief systems and life's meanings. Individuals might feel lost or disconnected from their sense of purpose, but you help others find the meaning and the trust in their own journey. For our Chiron and Capricorns, your wounds are related to achievement and responsibility. So you might have a feeling of inadequacy, or you might struggle with authority. For you guys, you help others realize their potential and help them achieve success without the self-judgment. For our Chiron in Aquarius, your wounds are going to be related to belonging and individuality. You might feel like an outsider or struggle with fitting in, but you also guide others into embracing their uniqueness and contribute to the greater good. And finally, Chiron in Pisces, your wounds are going to be related to empathy and boundaries. You might struggle with being overly sensitive or feeling lost in emotions, but at the same time, you teach others how to care for themselves while maintaining compassion for others.
Yeah, so that is Chiron and all the different signs. And as we stated, all of these are just to show you, if you just kind of own that sensation of it feeling extra vulnerable wherever it is and whatever sign it lands in, then you also get to help people with that same vulnerability. Next, we're going to go through what Chiron looks like in each of the houses, and I'm just going to read it off. So Chiron in the first house. Individuals with Chiron in the first often struggle with identity and self-confidence, but these challenges ultimately lead to greater personal strength. They possess a unique presence that commands respect, though they might find it difficult to prioritize their own needs while easily helping others discover their strengths. For Chiron in the second house, these individuals may experience discomfort with money, possessions, or self-worth. While they are skilled at helping others recognize their value, they may carry guilt about enjoying material things or treating themselves. Chiron in the third house, communication and learning may feel challenging as these individuals worry about saying too much or too little. However, their unique ideas and methods often aid others in expressing themselves more effectively. For Chiron in the fourth house, early experiences with family and home life deeply shape these individuals. They may feel like they never do enough at home, but they excel at making others feel valued and comfortable. Offering themselves the same compassion they give to others is key. For Chiron in the fifth house, creativity and self-expression are important, but individuals with this placement often feel self-conscious about showing off their talents. While they encourage others to embrace their individuality, they are on their own journey to fully accept their uniqueness. For Chiron in the sixth house, these individuals are skilled at helping others with routines, health, and organization, but they may find it difficult to manage their own lives. They often feel overwhelmed and disorganized through their unconventional approach to daily life, but it is a hidden strength. For Chiron in the seventh house, partnerships and relationships provide significant life lessons for these individuals. They believe strongly in equality, yet they may give more than they receive. Their wisdom in navigating relationships makes them natural guides for others. For Chiron in the eighth house, with deep self-awareness of emotional attachments, loss, and power dynamics, these individuals are often drawn to transformative experiences while they help others navigate intense emotions. Learning to accept and heal their own wounds is a part of their path. Chiron in the ninth, these individuals seek meaning and purpose in life. They inspire others to explore new ideas and philosophies, but they may sometimes feel disconnected from their own beliefs. Trusting their personal vision is an important part of their growth. For Chiron in the 10th house, cough, cough, individuals with Chiron in the 10th have strong ideas about success and responsibility, but may feel that they never quite measure up. While they are effective at helping others achieve their goals, finding satisfaction in their own accomplishments can be a challenge. For Chiron in the 11th, these individuals care deeply about community and social connection, yet may feel like they don't quite fit in. Their unique perspective encourages others to embrace individuality, though they may struggle with their own sense of belonging. And then finally, speaking for myself, Chiron in the 12th house. Highly sensitive and compassionate, these individuals often retreat into themselves when wounded. Balancing their desire to help others with their own self-care is essential for their healing journey. Beautiful.
Absolutely. I wanted to circle back before we give you guys some writing prompts for your own self-reflection on Chiron and what you've learned today. And while you're reading the 10th house, it made me think too how something that I find very comforting in this life is if I gave you a detailed description of my resume, it sounds all over the place, but I think you could really surmise every single job I've ever had to an assistant position. I say this to Jen all the time, and she thinks I'm putting myself lower, but there is such a satisfaction to me to being an assistant to people. Just being a second set of hands when people feel overwhelmed and they can't take all that's on their plate. I love taking some of that off of their plate. I also love optimizing things for people. It makes me feel so good. But at the same time, I'm always constantly oh, I could do this better next time. I could do this better. And it used to come from a really shamey, guilt-driven, very not good for your nervous system way. I did this and yeah, I got done, but I didn't do it perfect. So, and I would just spiral. But now it's more okay, well, today got done. Good job. Check. We did it. Next time, maybe if we do this, it'll just go a little smoother. But I feel good. I feel good overall. I think also making that mind-body connection to astrology is really important. And, listening to these wounds and how they hit you and how that might affect you, and finding safety in your nervous system when you do feel triggered by Chiron is such an important step. So with that being said, ways to help you dive a little deeper and get a little more personal with this is we have a couple writing prompts for you guys. If you're more of a reader and not a verbal person, I will also put these in the description and on our Instagram.
In what areas of my life do I feel wounded or insecure, and how do I handle those feelings?
When do I tend to put others' needs before my own, and why?
How do I respond when I don't fit in with a group or community?
What beliefs about myself do I need to let go of in order to heal?
And how can I be kinder to myself while continuing to grow and help others?
I love Chiron so much.
Mm-hmm. And so do a little journaling, do a little reflection. There's definitely a lot of resources to kind of dig into it. It's just not talked about as much. But I think the reflection of your own life is one of the best ways to learn astrology, and just figuring out how your own chart has been lived speaks huge volumes. The other thing I wanted to say in this episode was we recently had a PowerPoint night party, and I did astrology and politics, and it was so fun to also look into the history of the bigger collective wounds when Chiron was in each sign. So even though we're all born with a Chiron placement, Chiron is always changing signs, and you can literally see the greater themes of these wounds in a larger context. So currently, when we're recording this episode, Chiron is in Aries, and it's wild to see historically what this time is pulling up for all of us. And I looked at previous times in history when Chiron was in Aries, and the themes parallel each other so much. So there is always these patterns to be recognized throughout history of what Chiron has been calling us to heal as a greater collective. And the United States currently, when we're recording this, is in its fourth Chiron return. So for the fourth time, it's back where it was when the United States was established as a nation. And the parallels to that and what's being unpacked, the United States is going through such a journey. And I just think it's really cool to even see the larger historical context, because we all have our own stuff to unpack. That's ultimately the biggest thing we can do, is help heal ourselves to heal everything. But it's also so cool historically to see Chiron.
Also, if you're listening to this and your Chiron is in Aries, you would also be having your Chiron return, which these things can come at you in a very heavy sense. These are your deepest wounds. So, maybe also while you're journaling, especially for a Chiron Aries, really take time to simmer on what themes are coming up for you, in the same way that the US probably needs to simmer on what themes are constantly coming up for them in this fourth run.
Yeah, and for always tracking where Chiron is in the current sky. So it's in Aries as we speak, and the Aries area of your chart has been being hit by Chiron. So it's also really wild to look back at your life, see Chiron's dates and what sign it was in. And you probably went through a lot in that area of life. Chiron, since it has been in Aries, that's my 8th house, and I have been torn wide open with intimacy wounds. It could not have been louder. My Aries area of my life has literally been transformed since Chiron's been aspecting it. So this is so much deeper than even just your integrated energy. It's also just a good thing to watch in the current sky. It'll be going into Taurus next. We still have quite a bit. Chiron moves really slow and has a bit of a more chaotic orbit to it.
It's not linear like the other ones. Like everyone usually goes through their Saturn return around 27 to 29. Chiron's something you just kind of got to check.
Yeah, it rebels just like the healing journey goes. It doesn't follow a consistent path, and Chiron does not either.
Snaps.
Well, we hope you guys enjoy this episode. We love to hear your feedback about Chiron, and we're here for any questions. And please check out the resources that we link to this as well.
If you would like a birth chart reading and understanding, not just your more chironic wounding, but just more about yourself, there will be a link in our bio. Jen is a wonderful astrologer.
Thank you.
One day I'll be plugging myself with you, just not today.
Yeah, I'd love to do a chart reading for you and help you unpack this more if it feels a little overwhelming to look into yourself. But we thank you for listening to another episode.
And we'll see you next Friday.
All right.
Bye.